Hey YouTubers, this is the Gold Standard Caesar 924 coming at you with Chapter 13 in my Wrestling Reimagining series for WWE 2006. As we draw closer to the end of this series, I'll be tackling the second November PPV event, which will be Survivor Series. Now, the actual Survivor Series card, even rewatching that show, it just really felt like very underwhelming for the most part. There was just a number of matches that just felt like there was more to be desired. The main event just kind of feeling a bit weak. I believe that the main event that year was Batista and King Booker for the world title, and Batista won his World Heavyweight Championship under dubious circumstances, despite the fact he was portrayed as the hero. You also had the Survivor Series team matches like Team Cena versus Team Show, which just kind of felt very flat. Kennedy and Undertaker was enjoyable in some places, but I could also argue that was the weakest out of the three series of matches that they had. Let's see. Really, the only really good match out of that card was it Team DX versus Team Rated RKO, where Shawn and Hunter were co-captains and Orton and Edge were co-captains from opposing sides. There isn't really a whole lot you need to know about what you need to know going into Survivor Series except for one, and that involves the inevitable injury of Rey Mysterio. Now, I believe Mysterio was on the brink of undergoing knee surgery at this time. So, what they did was a little after No Mercy. This could be a similar situation where MVP and Rey Mysterio would have some kind of rematch on SmackDown, and MVP would go over Rey Mysterio and injure Rey Mysterio in the process, so therefore sidelining him out of in-ring competition. So really trying to put over MVP as this kind of sadistic heel that fans just want to despise, especially taking out their favorite hero. So we could do something along those lines just to really kind of put over this new up and comer. We would have like Rey Mysterio maybe come out there and address the WWE fans about his updates regarding his condition and that he'll be back at 100% in no time. Now, as far as my card for Survivor Series, this was held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This was the home of the original ECW. What we would do is open up the show with a sort of a ECW tribute match of sorts. Now, this would be an angle between the New Breed and the ECW originals. They did this in reality as well, but I don't think they started this program until many months later. But they did have a majority of the talent that was available at this time. So I figured just kind of do that a little sooner. Now, I might have reiterated this even back in my Cyber Sunday video about how I wasn't necessarily booking ECW, but I ended up booking at least one match involving ECW anyway. I'm not going to necessarily announce the actual competitors that would be competing in the 4-on-4 match or the 5-on-5 match, depending on the situation. But whatever the case may be, what we would do is that if, hypothetically, if Paul Heyman were to come up to me and come up with some idea to kind of generate some viewers into watching the revival of ECW. It's like, things have been going really good so far, but now I just need like this one big storyline or angle that's going to have viewers just coming in and watch our product. Now, this would be Extreme Rules Survivor Series match, so it won't be like a traditional 4-on-4 or a 5-on-5 where it's like weapons are allowed. There's no DQs. There's no countouts. The only way to win is if you eliminate all your opponents. Anything goes, just to kind of give the Philadelphia crowd just something to remember as far as their appreciation of ECW. So I would have the original ECW wrestlers to go over the New Breed, but this won't be the end of the New Breed. It's not the end of the world. They're not intending on getting buried or anything, but they'll also get an opportunity to really showcase what they can do and really shine as athletes. Now we have is another Survivor Series match. Now this will be 5-on-5. DX, Shawn Michaels, Triple H would serve as the co-captains representing their team while taking on a faction based on three different managers just all coming together to stop DX and their army. We would have Roddy Piper, Armando Estrada, and Matt Striker. Three of these managers would kind of forge this sort of alliance to stop DX. It would play a sort of ongoing saga that would build up in the Raws leading into Survivor Series. On DX's side, obviously I already mentioned Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and the three other wrestlers that would be representing their team would consist of guys like Ric Flair, Johnny Jeter, and Nick Nemeth. Over on Piper, Estrada, and Striker's team would consist of Umaga, Chris Masters, Nick Dinsmore, and the Highlanders, Rory and Robbie McAllister. So it's 5-on-5. As far as Nick Dinsmore's role is concerned, since he's got Jim Duggan and Sergeant Slaughter out of their way, he's turned his attention over to Triple H, bringing up some of their past animosity from 2 years prior. Is that Triple H, you gave me an opportunity to take me under your wing as part of a member of Evolution, but all you cared about was yourself, and my career's kind of gone downhill from there. I feel like, back then, I mean, I should have known that you were the type of wrestler that backstabs on your companions, and now this time I'm out for retribution. They could obviously bring up some of the past animosity that Dinsmore and Triple H had from 2 years prior, but that turned out to be a ruse, and that Triple H never intended on making Dinsmore as part of a member of his own team. Now, everything else is pretty much self-explanatory since Flair and Masters kind of had their program going on. The Thrill Seekers and the Highlanders, especially with, they were teaming up at Cyber Sunday, but they came up short to the wrestlers representing ECW in their inter-brand match. Shawn Michaels and Umaga still have their thing going on as well. Bottom line is that the alliance of Armando Estrada, Roddy Piper, and Matt Striker are going to go over Shawn Michaels and Triple H, Team DX, the DX Army, however you want to put it. Now, come to think of it, Roddy Piper, even though he was scheduled to be part of this event, had to opt out of the show since he was diagnosed with cancer at this time. So this could just be like Team Estrada and Matt Striker, serving as co-captains against Shawn and Triple H representing co-captains of the opposing side. We would have the likes of Umaga, Chris Masters, Nick Dinsmore, and the Highlanders. They're going to be the ones to come out on top. Now we have is the third match, which will be the Buried Alive between Undertaker taking on Mr. Kennedy. At No Mercy, Taker and Kennedy had a match which ended in disqualification. Taker tombstones The Miz on his birthday, and Mr. Kennedy, despite being Miz's protege, just decides to just kind of back away. He was on the aisle. He just didn't even do anything to help out his friend. So there's a riff going on between Kennedy and Miz. But even though the announcers and the viewers at home kind of look at this as these two companions are kind of going through some personal problems, feels like, as far as Kennedy and Miz, like maybe there's something going on that we, the fans at home, or the announcers commentating, don't realize. We get to the Survivor Series. This would be a match stipulation. Obviously, the way to win is literally burying your opponent alive. Kennedy and Taker are still, continuing to feud at this moment. And this would just be a lot of all-out brawling back and forth, since this was no disqualification, no countouts, no pinfalls or submissions, lack thereof. So it's anything goes. Weapons will be utilized very heavily in the Buried Alive match. Obviously, the shovel being a key component object. Undertaker pretty much dominates the match for the most part. Midway towards the end, and just when it looks like Taker's gonna get ready to bury Mr. Kennedy, like something's gonna happen where Taker is caught off guard by The Miz. And we're led to believe that The Miz and Kennedy have this sort of falling out when it turns out that this is actually all a conspiracy all along just to get fans' attention, give them something to talk about. But really, this was Miz and Kennedy's way of trying to undermine the fans' intelligence. So together, Miz and Kennedy help each other bury The Undertaker alive. And, Miz could probably use like some kind of like a machine, a vehicle, or something that allows Mr. Kennedy to get some advantage, and having all this cement just pouring out and just literally covering or the massive pit that Undertaker's being buried, thus allowing Mr. Kennedy to pick up a victory against the Phenom. Now we have is the 4-on-4 Survivor Series match with John Cena's team taking on Carlito's team. Over on Cena's side is Johnny Nitro and Crime Time. On Carlito's side, it's Jeff Hardy and the World's Greatest Tag Team. This is a continuation of the Cena-Carlito rivalry that's been going on dating back to Unforgiven. And this feud has kind of evolved over the next several months, even at Cyber Sunday in a 6-man tag match with Crime Time, who were just debuting. So they started to form an alliance with John Cena, as well as the World's Greatest Tag Team, who have their beef going on with Crime Time. While Cena and Carlito would go on to have a match on Monday Night Raw, even that match ended in disqualification with Crime Time, helping out Cena, and while Haas and Benjamin come out there to even the odds. Nitro and Hardy also have their beef going on around that same time, and Nitro and Hardy are representing opposing sides. So this kind of really utilizes this as just trying to kind of tie into what has been going on as far as like 3 different feuds just kind of merge into this one 4-on-4 8-man tag elimination. And I would have Carlito's team going over the Chain Gang and Johnny Nitro, really kind of giving Carlito a bit of an edge here, especially since Cena's always come out on top, even no matter how many times Carlito's just sick and tired of just seeing Cena and just runs his mouth and always getting the last laugh, being one step ahead of him. Carlito and his team are going to finally get that feel-good babyface victory. Carlito's going to get that pinfall on John Cena in order to be the sole survivor of his team. Now we have is the WWE Championship bout, and Edge will walk in as champion defending the belt against Kane. Now Edge and Kane have their history that the announcers will definitely pick up, even going back to a year prior. Kane and Lita were married, and at some point Lita turned on Kane to side with Edge. So there was just a lot of back and forth going on between Edge and Kane throughout the summer. Edge and Kane are kind of going through this sort of like a little mini rivalry of sorts, since I haven't really booked Kane in a whole lot of pay-per-view events since Vengeance. But Kane will come back. Now, I didn't necessarily mention this at the last video, but if I were to add one segment or one scenario that would occur after the main event. So Edge beats Triple H in that Texas Death Match, and just when Edge is celebrating, the lights go out, the pyros erupt, Kane's music hits, announcers put it over, it's like Kane's back, we haven't seen him in a couple months now, and so he's just going out there, choke slam Edge, maybe even the Tombstone Pile Driver, but that kind of really sets up a program for the next pay per view. I mean, this feud would just be kind of like a one off. It's not something that I want to stretch out for the next several weeks, but Edge is going to go over Kane, and what we're going to have is that Edge is going to use the Execution DDT on the Kane to the WWE title belt, as opposed to, normally when Edge would use the spear to defeat his opponents, where Edge is going to lay out Kane with the Impaler DDT onto the championship belt to retain the WWE Championship. So Edge is, looking very strong as champion. I wasn't intending on making Edge as champion as long as I've had, but he was a pretty hot commodity for WWE, especially this year. Now we have is the last of the traditional Survivor Series elimination matches, and this will be a SmackDown match consisting of Batista's team taking on Randy Orton's team. Now, for Batista's team, this would consist of obviously Batista along with Bobby Lashley, Matt Hardy, Paul London, Brian Kendrick, whereas Orton's team would comprise of guys like Fit Finlay, Shane Helms, and the reunited Blue Bloods consisting of William Regal and Squire Dave Taylor, who was actually making his debut sometime after No Mercy. Now, Batista and Orton still have their continuing saga going back to earlier this year where Batista was taken out of action and Orton just taking over the throne even as World Heavyweight Champion for a short period of time. Batista injuring Randy Orton with those spine busters, Orton coming back and costing Batista the world title bout at No Mercy. Then they had a last man standing match on the Family Reunion show, which ends in a draw. Now this feud is, continuing to really escalate into something a lot more personal. And eventually you have these wrestlers all kind of coming together, like siding with certain wrestlers, and they're all kind of forming this unit. But in this case with Orton's team, with guys like Fit Finlay, he has his thing with Bobby Lashley, so they're all kind of getting involved in some way or another. Shane Helms has his ongoing saga with Matt Hardy, and so they're kind of, counteracting one another, and they're both taking sides on, who's the better team in this whole debacle. Even the Blue Bloods with Regal and Dave Taylor, who was just coming in, and so they're going after the tag team titles, and even Regal and Taylor are winning their respective series of matches between London and Kendrick, whether they're singles matches or they're like non-title tag matches, so giving them kind of like that momentum that they need in order to qualify for the tag team title belts. So this is a 5-on-5 match. Orton's team is going to go over Batista's team here. Orton's going to actually use the shillelagh that Finlay left behind despite being eliminated, but he does leave a shillelagh behind just in case of desperate situations, even when Orton's team at any point in time that they're outnumbered. So that could be sort of like their kind of like the momentum shift. Orton's gonna nail Batista with the shillelagh, and the referee could be distracted or knocked out of sorts, but the referee's not gonna see it, and Orton's gonna use the shillelagh to his advantage and pin Batista in order to win for his team. So Orton's Survivor Series streak is still going strong, and he's not being looked at as like a complete phony like he was during this year. I mean, I know as much as I like the rated RKO stuff for what it was, at the same time, it was just kind of there. They just kind of paired up Orton and Edge since they didn't really have much significance, especially as singles competitors. So they had to kind of, make the best out of this given situation and, keep themselves relevant. But this feud is far from over. In fact, there is actually one more encounter that I have planned for the next pay per view. And given that the tagline for Armageddon, the end is here, that's a sneak preview for what's going to come at the December pay per view. So Orin's team will go over Batista's team in the process. Now we have is the first out of the two doubleheader matches, and this will be the World Heavyweight Championship belt being up for grabs. Booker T going in as the champion, defending the belt against Chris Benoit. Now, this feud at this point had already been done many times, even a year prior, since Benoit got moved back to SmackDown. So they had a best of 7 series. Booker T at this point turned heel. And there was just a lot of dubious circumstances that were going on in late 05, going to early 06. But at the end of the day, Benoit managed to get the last laugh. He got some retribution over Booker T to regain that U.S. Championship belt. And that would be sort of a moment or something that you would definitely bring up as far as that, rekindling this program's concerned, since, Benoit's beaten Booker in the past, and he feels that if he was able to win the U.S. title from Booker, he can do the same thing by taking away the World Heavyweight title. Something simple to that effect. Now, I was going to have this as the main event of the show, but then, because I made a decision as far as the result, that would not pan out really well with the fans. And this match is going to end in a countout where Benoit will manage to make it back at the count of 10 while Booker T remains at ringside. But, because a title belt can't change hands via disqualification or, in this case, a countout. So therefore, Booker T is still the World Heavyweight Champion. Crowd boos. Announcers are just kind of like, no, not this way. It's like, Benoit, even though he won this match, he just couldn't, make Booker T submit, or he wasn't able to pin him in the middle of the ring, because that's the only way that he could win that championship belt. Benoit, especially in the weeks leading the Survivor Series, just, trying to get back to the promised land, try to reclaim his throne that, even though Booker T claims that it's his throne, but Benoit, since coming back from his sabbatical, it's like wants to relive that glory once again, that he's not just this one-hit wonder. But things just didn't go the way as planned, unfortunately. But even despite the fact that Benoit did, however, came out as the victor, but fortunately, so it was a count out, so therefore, Booker T still is World Heavyweight Champion. Now we get to our main event. And you might as well say that this is just way ahead of its time. It's something that's very unheard of in 2006. Just the idea of having these two particular wrestlers, especially when it comes to the women's division, to headline a pay-per-view. And this match that I'm referring to is going to be a women's championship versus career bout between Mickie James taking on Lita. Now, even though this was a match that they did in actuality, but I'm going to try and make this a lot more significant than it actually was. Now, backtracking the past few months, going back to Unforgiven, Lita and Mickie James were involved in that triple threat elimination, which involved Trish Stratus, who would go on to win the women's championship in what turned out to be her final match. So she vacated the title belt. They did a interbrand battle royal match at Cyber Sunday. Mickie James and Lita were the final two competitors, but even despite that, it ended in a no contest. Both women landed at ringside at the same time. Both feet touched the ground. So therefore, they couldn't come up with a decisive winner. So because of that, as a result, a match between the two competitors will ensue at Survivor Series. This will be sort of the penultimate encounter. No disqualification, no countouts. We have to have a clear winner, no questions asked. Now, Lita's been a part of the WWE for 6 years. And while there's no denying just how much of a contributing factor that she had when it came to female wrestling, in recent years, however, Lita's been also been the subject of controversy. There was this gossip that broke out involving her affair with Edge, and Lita breaking up with Matt Hardy, cheating on him in favor of Edge. So there was just a lot of debacle that goes on. Lita was also with Kane in kayfabe sense, even though Lita and Matt was a relationship that was from real life. But Lita and Kane were in the storyline. Lita turned on Kane since they were husband and wife, and so Lita sided with Edge. They kind of brought up some of their real life upbringing, however you want to put it. Now, Edge and Lita have been together throughout the remainder of 2005, going into a majority of 2006. And Lita, even despite the fact that she's been wrestling and that she's still stuck around throughout all these years, you fans have turned on me. It feels like even despite all the blood, sweat, and tears that I've poured into you guys in order to put on and entertain all you WWE fans out there, I feel like you guys don't give me the respect that I deserve. Granted, I've done some things, some terrible decisions that I've made in the past, but don't let that deny just how much of an influence and how much of an impact that I have on this particular industry. Now, Mickie James, on the other hand, she had an alliance, or at least in this universe that I've built. Mickie James has this alliance going on with Beth Phoenix and Candice Michelle. At some point, especially going into Unforgiven, Mickie James was the women's champion going into it. But then, despite the fact that she insisted Beth and Candice to not interfere in the match, they ended up doing so anyways. So that played a huge part in Mickie James being the first competitor eliminated in the triple threat elimination, thanks to Lita. So that continues to escalate going into October. And then we fast forward here into November. Beth and Candice Michelle have turned on Mickie James, and now she's going through a series of matches, mostly singles matches and handicap matches, just to really kind of throw in challenge after challenge. And a lot of the times, Mickie James is kind of getting the short end of the stick. Since the women's championship belt is up for grabs, there's currently no one holding that title belt at the moment. Now, what we would do is that because this women's championship belt signifies that without question you are the best damn woman to ever step foot in sports entertainment, professional wrestling, how have you. Mickie and Lita, this is too big for the both of us, and due to the stakes being high, one of us is going to walk out as women's champion, while the other wrestler would be forced to quit the WWE. So that kind of plays along into this match stipulation I have here. Mickie James taking on Lita, and the winner of the match will be the women's champion, and the loser will be forced to leave the WWE. So it's basically all or nothing. The cards are all stacked. This explains as far as why I had this as the last match featured on my Survivor Series card. Mickie James and Lita, this is the main event. Give them plenty of time. I know they only had like 8 minutes that they had, and most of the match was remembered for pretty much the aftermath. In reality, since this turned out to be Lita's final match. Now, Lita does have a history of closing out Monday Night Raws in the main event on 2 occasions. There was her against Stephanie McMahon in 2000, and her match with Trish Stratus in 2004. Now we go into pay-per-view, and to have Lita just get this inevitable send-off that she would have, it's no brainer that Mickie James would go over Lita and she's going to walk out as your new women's champion. Something to the effect where it feels like you want, just try to build up some suspense heading into this main event. We could see some ref bumps along the way and some back and forth action here and there. At some point, Edge is going to interfere in this match. He's going to spear Mickie James while the referee's out. Lita just goes over, covers Mickie James. Edge tries to wake up the referee. He makes like the slow pin count, like it's 1, 2, and then barely Mickie James raises her shoulders up just close to 3. Lita's in shock and awe. She couldn't believe it. That should have been it. Edge is also in shock as well. The match continues. Beth Phoenix, Candice Michelle could come out there. Mickie James fends them off. Lita tries to take advantage, but Mickie manages to outsmart Lita in the process. Kane would also come out there after what happened during his match with Edge, which ended in dubious circumstances. So Kane's going to come out there and get some retribution over Edge. And this will definitely allow Mickie James to get that comeback victory. And she's going to nail Lita with her finishing move in order to become the women's champion again. That's really my main event as far as how the match flowing will go. Now, I won't necessarily have like Lita just drag on as far as that post-match segment where everyone was completely ridiculing Lita and just completely harassing her in every way. Now, granted, Lita was a heel, so in some ways it was understandable for her to get that treatment, but I don't think we really need to go that far. But in the extent of which Mickie James, this would be a scenario where the babyface would close out the pay-per-view on a happier note. And Lita is just kind of on her knees. She's in the middle of the ring. The crowd's just chanting, na 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 na, na 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 na, hey, 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 goodbye. Lita's just kind of at a loss for words, like she's bursting into tears. Edge is, kind of reacting to this scenario since they have their relationship that had been going on for over a year and a half. Edge is trying to do all his best to comfort her, but she pushes Edge away, and Mickie James could just be celebrating, and Kane would just scare off Edge. Well, maybe not scare him off, but just kind of lay him out. And then Lita tries to attack Mickie James post-match, but Mickie just finds a way to make a comeback and just nails Lita with the championship belt. So the pay-per-view will close with Mickie James raising the women's title belt, and that's how we would close out the pay-per-view there. So let me know what you think about my Survivor Series 2006 card. Stay tuned as I will book the final installment in my Wrestling Reimagining series for WWE 2006, where I'll be tackling the December pay-per-view event Armageddon. Stick around for that if you're still interested, that is. Yeah, just leave out your honest feedback down in the comment section below. Till then, this is the Gold Standard 00924 signing out. So thank you all guys for watching.